I've always lived in LA area, and I moved back here, Pasadena. This is where I grew up and where I live. I was the middle kid, so I didn't really do a lot of roughhousing with my brother because he's 6 years younger than me. You know what I mean? So I was always a lot older than him, a lot bigger. There's a lot of, in my neighborhood there was a lot of roughhousing, and I have a lot of cousins, and that's who I did most of that with. Like if my father saw me out and get into a fight, and I was I think he says when I was a little kid, when I was really small, he says I was kind of a timid kid. And so if some of the neighborhood kids beat me up, he wouldn't let me in the house and stuff like that. And so he made sure that I got back out there and defended myself and didn't let people push me around. A friend of my dad gave me a karate lesson when I was like 10, and he gave me a couple of karate lessons. I liked that. And then when I was about 13, I started doing, going to a school, and we did traditional martial arts, kung fu and karate. I did that for a couple of years, and then stopped doing that. I think the school closed down. I ended up, one of my friends, I had a friend who moved from LA, and he was into boxing, and he was kind of a rough kid. He had been involved in gangs, and he started teaching me about boxing and whatnot. I was kind of like the project, because I was kind of like, I don't know, I was kind of a corny kid. I think I was like his project or whatever. I had a friend who was, who got me into kickboxing. Everybody said he did martial arts. His name was Kevin Schumann, and I thought, we were doing the same things, karate, and I'd done a little bit of boxing. And then I went to watch one of his fights, and he was fighting on a card. He was, probably 17 years old, and he was fighting grown men from Thailand with tattoos and stuff. And that was like in the 80s. That was a big deal for me. I was like, wow, you know what I mean? And he's having this match. So I said, man, I'd like to do this. And that's who introduced me to Frank Trejo. So I trained, and I'm back and forth, and then I'd fight at some of the smokers, El Monte Self-Defense School. Like we'd have different smokers around here, and then I ended up having a couple little matches. I fought at the San Bernardino Arena and stuff like that. And so yeah, but it was something that I didn't do it consistently. It's something I would mess around with. Then I'd be working, or I'd be doing this, and then say, I think I'll have a match, and I'd go train for a few months and have a match. And I didn't do it all the time. When they had the first Ultimate Fighting Championship, one of my friends was involved in it, Frank, named Frazier, and so I didn't believe that it was actually going to happen, because at the time we were even with kickboxing, there was we couldn't elbow, we couldn't do knees. The rules were always changing. Like one week you could kick inside the leg, the next week you couldn't kick inside. It was very confusing. So for us to be able to even have kickboxing with the limited rules we had, and they were still always trying to make those more controlled, I was like, there's no way on earth they're going to allow this. And even though I saw a television date, I did not believe that it was really going to happen. To the moment that first kick came and the guy's tooth got kicked out, it's like, wow, this is really happening. And then I see my friend come out and he fights and he's doing well, and then he gasses out and the big dude stomps him out. It's like, wow, this is what's happening. So it made, of course I was going to start training that. There was no thought to not, and then especially seeing, I had heard about the Gracies and their challenge, and I told my coach, like, hey, this is before the UFC. I told him, hey, well, let's go beat those guys up. He's like, no, man, they know all this stuff, and if you don't know it, they get you on the ground. They do all this weird stuff too. If you don't know it, man, so of course I want to. So I started trying to learn about that as well, and so yeah, it was just the natural thing for me to want to do. I like martial arts, and I think that's part of it. I was back and forth about it. Like, some people are very sports driven and competing, and I was half and half. I never liked that. I liked martial arts. I've always been involved in it. And also I like the fact that, especially when you start learning position and whatnot, I think there's a nerd aspect to it, especially with the submission grappling. It's like playing chess. It's like kinetic chess, and to be able to use your mind to be able to to understand this more and beat people that way, I think is really attractive. And so I like studying martial arts, and then every now and then, if you do it, sometimes you need to compete, and then I would do all the other things that I really didn't like to do that much back then, like run and train and work out to try to avoid getting a public ass whooping. You know what I mean? So that's then, once I'd start doing that, then I go, oh, maybe I should try to compete some more and things like that. And I'd have some thoughts like, oh man, it'd be fun, yeah, compete and do well. I think I could do this, and then life would happen and I wouldn't, you know. I started doing combat sports as a kid, so I started karate and I started boxing at 15 and then training kickboxing. I wasn't afraid when I first started doing this. I was a kid and you know, even though I wasn't really into sports, I had decent athletic potential, you know, I can jump high, I can jump and kick over people's head and I could do all that kind of stuff. And I was really more thinking about what I was gonna do to them as opposed to what was gonna happen to me. And so I was too busy thinking about how much fun I was going to have than to be afraid. I was like, man, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. And that's the way it was usually working out for me too. And then I think I was probably about 23 and I decided I'd been working and I was out of shape and somebody called me. I'm like, didn't you used to like do stuff besides work and eat too much food? And it's like, yeah, you know, I should do martial arts again. So I started training and went linked up with my coach and eventually he got me a match and before that match, the first time, I was actually scared, like 3 days before. I was like, man, I guess I'd grown up enough to realize that, hey, something could happen to me, you know, and seen enough to realize, hey, that, you know, seen people having injuries and not always thinking about, for some reason before, I always thought about me doing that to someone else. I never thought about it happening to me. So, yeah, I was scared and like the night before, I couldn't sleep and I had never had that experience before. And then the day of the fight, all I want to do is sleep. And I was talking to my coach. I was like, man, I'm just so sleepy. He's like, oh, that's a reaction. Your body does that when you know you're going to have to do something. And it says, hey, you know, just it's time to sleep until it's time to do this. And so then I had the match, and you know, and I realized I was in there fighting myself more than I was fighting the other person. You know, like I was telling you about earlier, I threw a kick, and the guy hit me with a right that I didn't even see, and I was like, it stunned me pretty bad, and I was like, man, why am I doing this? You know, if I just lay down, it'll be over. And then, you know, I talked myself back into it, and you know, I'm actually fighting him really good. And my biggest thing is I thought back, like, man, if I had spent all my energy fighting him and not as much fighting myself, it would have been a pretty easy match for me. And that's part of the thing that I think I miss more about it is working through that stuff. Because some matches I was like, you know what, I would try to like, well, I'm going to train and be so hard, train and be so prepared that I'm not gonna be worried or stressed or afraid my next fight. And of course I still was. And you know, it usually would be that way until I'd start warming up. Until I start walking and warming up, then all of a sudden it would go. It's like, okay, that means I'm really gonna do this. This is gonna happen. So no need to be afraid of it anymore. And but then some of my matches, the ones I didn't train for, I was just like, I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna have some fun. I wasn't afraid at all, you know. And I just, you know, just spent a lot of time being me and was there to have my experience, win or lose, and enjoy myself, you know. And those were fun experiences. One time I was talking to Frank Mir, and he says he loves this because it makes him a better person. And I really related to that. I think each fight made me a better person in so many different ways. I understood myself more, understood more about myself. You put yourself in that cooker, you know, under that pressure, and you always come out better. And one of my coaches was a ref, Larry Landless, and I used to go help him out on Kicking the Cage, and so I started refereeing a lot, and that started to stick for me. And it was one of the things I did. I still enjoyed my sport, but probably people looking out for me said it's a conflict of interest. They probably didn't want me to embarrass myself anymore. I don't know, but I still miss doing it. But the thing about it is I trained. One day I kept training the same way and was always training. I didn't have any cycle. So I was always there training hard. And since it was like most of the time I was always training for other people because other people always had fights going. So that's one of the things that I even realized that I didn't really take the time to get my needs met when I trained. And so like one time I had a fight in Korea and my fight was under Pride rules and I was still training with everybody under UFC type rules or under the unified rules, and so I wasn't prepared to take advantage of a lot of the opportunities for me to do soccer kicks and things like that. That would have been a lot of fun, you know what I mean? And so, but going into that also, when I had stopped competing, I'm still training more for other people, and it was really just grinding my body down, and I didn't have a cycle of having a match and then taking some time off and that, and so I was always hurt and it was really beating my body down, and then I just stopped and got out of shape. And then when I did, I got a membership at the 24-Hour Fitness and just went and worked out like a normal person. And I was surprised, like, hey, 45 minutes, and I'm not beat up. I like training the sport, but I don't train like I used to. And I have no need to let people, I don't like to train striking anymore. I don't have the need to get punched in the face if I'm not going to actually go and compete and punch someone. It doesn't make me happy just to punch someone in the face or get punched in the face anymore.
Why do you still like to roll?
It's fun. I like it. It's so many things I like about it. I think you know, one thing is it's a great sport. Another thing, it's like playing chess. It's like kinetic chess, and you know, it's a fun game, and I get a workout. I get so many benefits of it. Also, I think of it as you know, it helps my mindset and my philosophy, and it's just how some people reach enlightenment through meditation. I believe that martial arts, especially the position martial arts, are a type of meditation that bring you certain enlightenments. And I understand situations, and I really believe that my approach to things comes from the work I do, constantly grinding positions. It's a meditation that it helps me in life. Anything that people do, there's a lot of different reasons why people do it. You know, it's just the action of what they're doing. So, you know, some people are doing this because they want to challenge themselves, because maybe they were a meek type of a person and they wanted to challenge themselves that way. Some people are like, well, this is just what fits for me. And some people are really aggressive and they love getting into confrontation, and this, you know, they're just happy that they can punch people in the face and not go to jail, and it's just the best thing in the world for them. When I was doing this sport, you know, I wasn't the kind of guy who needed to get angry to motivate my motivation was to make a beautiful moment. You know what I mean? So there's guys like that, you know, you want to do something for the highlight reel, like, oh, you know, that was great, you know. I just enjoyed it. I think that, you know, there's a lot of ways to look at it. I mean, I like, you know, Vladdy's quote, you know, he says, well, sometimes being a man, you have to fight, you know. And that's true. And like another, one of my friends says, well, you know, if you're like any normal guy, you're going to have probably, I don't know, around 5 to 8 fist fights in your life. You might as well win. You're going to, you know, do a sport. So I don't know. But anyway, I think it's fun. Even though I don't want to be involved in, I want to imagine myself being in fist fights. I still like coming in here training. I like learning. I like learning new stuff. You and I rolled today. Yeah, we learned some new things. You know, I learned some stuff from you. I tried to share some of my techniques with you. Yeah, so that's the part I like.